Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is out in theaters, latest entry in the Marvel Cinematic Universe starring Paul Rudd, Evangeline Lilly, Michael Douglas, Michelle Pfeiffer, Jonathan Majors, Catherine Newton, and Bill Murray. It marks the beginning of Phase 5 of the MCU, a moment I've been kind of waiting for after the underwhelming Phase 4, which seems to have sacrificed quality for quantity in a lot of ways, and certainly didn't feel as connected as the previous entries in the MCU have been, rather like a lot of separate stories being told instead of really it feeling like a single universe where these characters run into each other over and over again. Marvel has hyped up Ant-Man as a return to that singular type of storytelling, as this film was going to introduce the next big villain after Thanos, Kang the Conqueror, and kickstart the next interconnected big storyline for the universe as a whole. Now, having seen the film as a huge Marvel fan, both of the movies and the TV shows and comic books, it breaks my heart to say that Quantumania is a straight up bad movie that fails to deliver on any of its promises, and it's almost unwatchable at points. It is surprisingly the worst entry in the entire franchise for me, and it made me angry instead of entertained. Where do I start with this? Okay, the basics of the story, as always, without spoilers, at least for now. Scott Lang is living his best life in San Francisco with Hope Van Dyne and his now teenage daughter Cassie. He's enjoying the fame of an Avenger and of one of the people that beat Thanos and saved the world. One day, though, an experiment goes wrong. Cassie tries to send a signal to the quantum realm to sort of map it and find out more about it, scientifically speaking, but then something responds, and all of the main cast are pulled into the quantum realm and have to find out a way to escape back to our dimension. But that may be difficult because it turns out there is an entire civilization down there, and its emperor, Kang, is hell-bent on using the newcomers to escape the quantum realm himself. That's the basics of it. Once you go into detail, the plot is much more convoluted. There's a bunch of new characters and factions. There's Kang with his endless cryptic explanations of what he wants to do once he escapes. There's Janet's past in the quantum realm. In general, what's baffling is that the movie can spend so much time on exposition and giving audience direct explanations of what's going on through dialogue and still make so little sense. Like, I don't feel I understand any of the mechanics of the multiverse or time travel or quantum bullshit any better than I did before this film. And while we're on the topic of explaining too much or too little, depending on the point of view, the film breaks the most important rule of filmmaking in regards to its key villain, and that rule is show, don't tell. To put it simply, I'll give you a good comparison, I think. Remember how Thanos was introduced in Infinity War? The film opens with him already having defeated an army of Asgardians, having Thor at his feet, and then easily winning a fight against the Hulk and getting the second Infinity Stone. 5 minutes of film, very little dialogue, and you already know, okay, this guy is seriously dangerous. Meanwhile, Quantumania introduces Kang, who we've been repeatedly told in marketing material is supposed to be a bigger threat than Thanos ever was. How does the film do that? Well, for half of it, the other characters just talk about Kang without even mentioning his name for a very long time. They say, "Ooh, he is coming, he is ruling this world, he is scary, he is bad, oh, he's done terrible things in the past," but we never actually see him do any of those things. Then he shows up on screen in person, and yes, Jonathan Majors has a great screen presence, but again, all he does is cryptic monologues and veiled threats to the heroes. He barely shows any of his actual power, whether it's supposed to be physical or through technology or knowledge or superpowers or whatever else. At one point, he finally goes into battle himself. He starts blasting nameless henchmen with lasers from his arms, and oh shit, these people are actually immediately vaporized when he does that. But then he shoots the same lasers at the main heroes and they just get pushed into the wall. Like, what is this? I mean, I know they will have some sort of plot armor, but seriously, to this extent? And like, apart from the smashy fighty bits, we never actually learn what was so bad about Kang in the Quantum Realm. Why was his rule so awful? What terrible things did he do to all these people? What is his plan about after getting out specifically? How did he convince so many of the inhabitants to work for him? At one point, Janet has a vision of his past, but it's only shown to us as this small, incomprehensible mishmash of glimpses. And then she says, "Oh, if you saw what I saw him do, you would be afraid." Well, show us then. Don't just tell us what a big bad man is. Show us why. It's a film. It's a visual medium. And then we get to the end, and so little actually happened in the film, or changed for the characters, that if it wasn't for the post-credit scene, it would seem that the whole movie was filler. It was just completely inconsequential. And even with that post-credit scene, it almost feels like, okay, so we just watched a 2-hour teaser for the real Kang film, which will come out in 2 years. That's not even everything that's wrong with the storytelling. A significant part of the plot, actually the entire plot, come to think about it, hinges on Janet Van Dyne refusing to talk about Quantum Realm and the time she spent there at all. She dismisses all the questions. She doesn't explain anything. Then when they're actually even in there, she says, "Oh, there's no time to explain. We have to go. I can't explain it." And then she does explain it. And it turns out if she had explained right from the beginning, the entire thing didn't even need to happen. Just say, there are people down there. There's a dangerous man in there who can't get out. Don't fuck with the Quantum Realm. Don't send anything there. The movie doesn't happen. And the movie doesn't give us a reason why she doesn't do that. It doesn't give us a reason why she would not share this vital information with the rest of the crew, with her family. It's bafflingly bad writing. It almost seems like the entire plot was just an excuse to have all, just as many flashy, fighty, shooty bits of action. We constantly jump from the next one to the next one. Bam, bam, explosion, shooting, smashing, bam, bam, explosion. There's a new creature, there's a new monster, there's a new looking guy. Bam, bam, explosion. Oh, honestly, it's tiring. It made me tired in the theater. It's exactly the type of science fiction that I hate. It just very little thought, very little world building, no philosophy at all, just a lot of incomprehensible action instead. And the action isn't even good in this one, nor is it as creative as, say, in the previous Ant-Man movie. You remember the enlarging and the shrinking of real-life objects, the car chase where the car would repeatedly shrink down or enlarge. That was very creative, but this one doesn't have anything like that. So, between the poor script, the cringe jokes, and the lack of creativity with the action, the film just feels so soulless and corporate. It's like it was made by one of those new AIs instead of real people. It also doesn't look particularly great. Most of it was shot on the Volume, which is the technology used to fantastic effect on The Mandalorian, and for some reason to terrible effect everywhere else it was used. Somehow in Quantumania, it's also very visible that this is just a small screen surrounding a tiny space in which the actors are interacting. There is no sense of reality or weight. Nothing feels like it's actually there. And therefore, I didn't really care about anything. And before you say, well, it's supposed to be weird and strange CGI world, so that's how they had to do it. Sure. But look at Avatar just recently. That world was largely CG as well, but it looked and felt real. It had weight. It made me feel transported there. No such thing in Ant-Man. Now, it's all very, very sad because I like these characters. I like the actors playing them. I think Paul Rudd is impossible to dislike. So to make a movie where even he isn't able to carry it speaks a lot. In general, the family dynamics between the main cast are okay. The performances are fine, maybe with the exception of Bill Murray, who shows up for 5 minutes of almost nothing, and his character has zero impact on the plot. His entire sequence could have been cut completely, removed from the film, and the movie would be the same. I thought that MODOK, as silly as he was, which if you know anything about comic books, he is supposed to look ridiculous, and he looks absolutely ridiculous in the film. And that's okay, that was done fine. Maybe except for his redemption arc towards the end, which felt forced, but in general, I felt he was done justice as a character. And also, again, I thought Jonathan Majors was doing a very fine job with the script he was given. But man, it's not enough. It's just rough. It's just rough. It's a very disjointed, messy, poorly written, poorly directed film. Questionable editing and jumps between the scenes, unconvincing visuals, mishandled villain, weak character motivations, the general feeling of little to no consequences. I mean, it is a problem that this film and Marvel in general is still largely afraid of killing established characters to raise the stakes. I think there should have been at least a few casualties in this film to set up Kang as a danger, and if they were really ballsy, they would have made it like Rogue One in Star Wars, just have everybody die. But the ending is just completely gutless in that regard. The thing I enjoyed the most, weirdly, was the first 10 minutes with Scott enjoying his life in San Francisco before they get shrunk down, and then the final 5 minutes, which are kind of an echo of the opening, with a wonderfully done sense of foreboding inserted into that ending. I felt genuinely anxious, which I hoped I would feel for more of the film, but I didn't. In fact, for most of it, I didn't feel anything. Maybe I was embarrassed a little bit that it's gotten to the point where it's this bad. I thought it was uninspired, disappointing, and boring, and it makes me really worried for the future of the MCU.